There are winners and losers in all animals, and that is true. There's intense competition for reproduction, and that's really the basis of all biology. And so understanding the behavior here and understanding the communication signals and how they influence the behavior, and then understanding how the brain mediates these changes is really important, because it's not just about frogs or lizards, it's about all of biology. And these kind of competitions that we see for reproduction are the fundamental basis of evolutionary biology. And what we try to do, and what NSF is really good at doing, is integrating these in research projects that look at evolution, behavior, physiology, and genetics all the way down to the molecular level. So what our research looks at is how social signals that an organism receives modify the brain so that it responds in a social environment differently as a function of being in a social environment and having social experience. We work on a variety of non-mammalian organisms. We work on green and old lizards, we work on a variety of frogs, mainly because their social interactions are in some ways very similar to ours, but in a simplified way. So in the frogs that we work with, these animals use vocal communication signals just like we do. So frog choruses are one of these examples. Those are not random calls. Those are species-specific advertisement calls that males make. Females that hear those calls, they can identify the species, they can identify the location, and they use the subtle differences among individuals in those calls to make their mate choice decisions. Males hear those calls and they use them as aggressive signals. They understand whether there are calls from males that are too close to them, or whether they should get closer to males in order to intercept females. So there's a lot of interchange of information, and at the same time a lot of manipulation that goes on that changes the physiological state of both the males and females that hear these. For the green and old lizards that we make, they make visual communication signals. They make visual displays that communicate things about their species, about their sex, about their aggressive intent, about their courtship intent. So many of the things that we find, for example, in the anolis lizards that NSF is funding the research for, is that just as a function of whether they are winners or losers in aggressive contexts, has effects not only on their aggression, but just on their general stress responsiveness. They become very different animals just as a function of receiving and responding to social signals. And we suspect that these changes influence brain structure and function so that, in essence, there's a memory of that social encounter that then guides later social encounters. What we need to do now, and one of the goals of the NSF funding that we have, is to really drill deeper into this process and ask, what are the cellular and molecular mechanisms that change the brain to give you this long-term persistent change? Understanding communication in the amphibian world is really just a model, although I kind of hate to say that, but it is really a model, or at least an example, of the communication behavior that occurs in all organisms. As I said before, reproduction and the competition for reproduction is fundamental to all biology. What the basis of that competition is individuals signaling to each other, whether it's frogs signaling to another frog, or a lizard to another lizard, or a monkey signaling to another monkey. The fundamental thing that all organisms do is reproduce. And they make those decisions based on the communication signals that come from other organisms. So as we look at any of these organisms, what we're really looking at is an example of the most important things that happen in the biological world.
For more information about the BRAIN Initiative, visit nsf.gov/brain.